Welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. This week, we feature the president of the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, Pete McCown. Pete, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
I don't know if you know this, but years ago, when I was changing careers, I'd reached out to about 125 people. I'd asked them, who do I need to get connected to in the community? Give me names. Tell me, who is it? And time again, your name came up as just this community connector. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Well, speaking of that, you get to be involved in a bunch of different things. How many events do you attend on the course of a year?
Well, I've pared that down a little bit. A few years ago, my board chair and I were together like 2 or 3 nights in a row. As you might imagine, there are about 300 kind of high performing or fully developed not-for-profits in Elkhart County, and all of them have at least 1 or 2 evening events, and we try to have a presence at the majority of them. So when the foundation was much smaller, I felt like I needed to attend, and my tenure here was shorter. I probably attended 200 a year. So about every other night, 3 or 4, 5 times a week. Sometimes it's 6 in a row. Sometimes I have a lighter week. Fortunately, now we have a number of other senior officers who can attend some of those events on the foundation's behalf, and I can get away with not being present in every one of them. So it's probably 150 or so. I've pared that back to 2 or 3 a week at this point.
Wow. Well, tell us about the foundation and just its uniqueness.
Well, there is a community foundation. There are 800 community foundations in the country. There are 92 of those 800 are in the state of Indiana. So there are 92 counties in Indiana. There are 92 community foundations. And that is the result of the Lilly Endowment making a decision to use community foundations to do grant making across the state. So 30 some years ago, they helped establish community foundations in every county in Indiana, and have given more than $1 billion. I think the number is more like $2 billion to these community foundations to grow and impact their community. We have the good fortune here in Elkhart County of being the second largest community foundation in the state. We have a balance sheet with somewhere between $450–500 million, which means we give away about $40 million a year, both at our discretion and at the instruction of our constituents who have put resources with us to help kids go to college or to support their favorite charitable organizations. Or there are about 200 and some families that have donor advised funds here with us, where they're the advisor to that fund, and they direct their giving both in Elkhart County and outside of Elkhart County. But we're essentially their charitable instrument for their own personal giving.
Well, as the president here, what is your favorite part about your job?
Oh, I have a dream job. So I would say favorite parts. I've spent my entire career helping people give generously, and that's really at the core of why I do the work I do. Is I believe that stewardship matters. My own Christian faith informs the way I see the world, and I believe that charitable giving, regardless of your faith perspective, is a spiritual act. And so it's very rewarding for me to help people have that spiritual experience. And I would say, as a general rule, people who give generously are good people, and they're interesting people to be around. And so the relationships that I have with that part of our constituency is super rewarding. I kind of like winning too. So I like keeping score and watching the balance sheet of the foundation grow. We're at 450 something today. When I started the foundation, we were at $43 million 13 years ago. So that's been a lot of fun to kind of journey with this organization.
So you're at 43 million when you started, and
Yep.
it's 450 today.
Correct. And there's no question that, a year from now we'll be close to 500, $500 million. We'll start talking about our assets with using a B. There's no question 10 years from now we'll be $1 billion+ organization. And, at some point in the future we'll be a $2 billion and a $4 billion organization. So that's been a lot of fun to watch the growth and development of the foundation. But on the other side, Kevin Deary, who's our Director of Professional and Organizational Development after a 30-year career with the Boys and Girls Club as Elkhart County's Chief Executive Officer, he's now with us. Kevin's got me teaching essentially a graduate level course on leadership and resource development to 25 of our not-for-profit CEOs. And this is a bit of an experiment, but it's gone so well that I think we're going to launch another a cohort of 25 and another cohort of 25. And this is a class, I'm treating it like a kind of a graduate course in not-for-profit leadership. So they have a textbook, they have reading assignments, they have homework assignments, and at the end there will be a graduation present and ceremony for them as well. Because what Kevin and I have kind of come to realize is we think that there are 5 key levers to a high-performing not-for-profit organization. And the first lever, in my opinion, is a deeply committed, well-qualified CEO, supported by a deeply committed, well-resourced, and generous set of board members, supported by a vision and a mission for the organization, like what is your purpose as the Humane Society or the Women's Care Center? There has to be a clear, kind of compelling narrative around that, supported by a strategic plan and a resource development plan to fuel that. Like, how do we accomplish that mission on a daily basis, and what resources are required to fulfill that mission? And the fifth is a well-qualified, committed team, internal team or staff. And if you get those 5 things right, the organization will be super high performing. So the work we do at the foundation, in addition to our grant making and helping donors do their thing well, is also helping our not-for-profit organizations be as high performing as they can be, which means we're investing in those 5 levers and trying to help them get as many of those 5 right. And our theory is if we give away $40 million a year and we spend $400,000 a year teaching and coaching, the other 99 cents on the dollar will be well deployed. And so we see that professional and organizational development investment probably as where we're having the greatest ROI in terms of the impact that those not-for-profits have in the community. And our mission is to make the community better by helping people be generous. So it's hard for us to fulfill the first half of that mission statement unless we have high-performing not-for-profits.
Wow, so you're spending a portion of your time leading others and teaching other leaders leadership characteristics. Who's been a leader in your past, or one of your favorite leaders that you followed or crossed paths with?
Well, I can tell you. So this is off camera, but there is a blue leather chair that sits in the corner of my office, and it has sat in the corner of my office my entire career.
Really?
And the story of that blue leather chair is that when I was in my early 20s, I started to work at a little Christian college in Rochester, New York, Roberts Wesleyan University, population maybe 2,500, 3,000 students. I started as the annual fund director, and then I became a gift officer, and then I became the director of development. And 4 years into my employment there, we had gone through 3 vice presidents for development or advancement. And the president asked me if I would be willing to serve as the interim vice president while we conducted yet a 4th search. I was 27 years old at the time, and we were just started in to a capital campaign to raise $30 million to build a performing arts center. Well, that chair is an identical twin to his desk chair. And his office was arranged in such a way that when you came in the door of his office, his desk was immediately in front of you against a wall. And at the end of his desk, on the entry side, was this blue leather chair. And if you were having a meeting with him and it was just the two of you one-on-one, you would just sit in that chair and he would push his desk chair back and you'd talk.
Right.
And this fellow, Bill Crothers, was my professional mentor. He's one of the finest college presidents, but he's also one of the finest leaders I've ever worked with or known. He had a determination and a steel to him that was aspirational. Like he was going to take this little university and make something of it. And he stayed almost 30 years as the president. And he took the institution from financial exigency to financial strength, grew the student body, grew the academic reputation. But he had a humility about him. He had a tremendous work ethic, deeply committed to the institution, visionary, but also had a humility in which he gave other people the freedom to do their work well. So I worked for a number of different bosses. Bill Crothers gave me the freedom to say, hey, we're going to try to raise $50 million to build a new library. That's your assignment. And here are the resources that I'm prepared to allow you to deploy to get us to $50 million. But you hire who you want to hire. You deploy those resources the way you do. The only thing I'm going to hold you accountable for is whether or not we get to $50 million with integrity. Wow. Right? And so he gave me the freedom as this 27-year-old kid. You know, they did the search and there was nobody that they hired. And so they scratched the interim vice president title off of my door and just left the vice president. But Bill Crothers and I had a great run together of 13 years in which we raised more money than either one of us imagined. We built an institution. We added a whole set of facilities and enhanced the campus. Wow. And then he retired, and my wife is from Central Illinois, and it was kind of a good time for me to write a different chapter in my life. So we relocated here in 2004 for me to serve as Bethel College's executive vice president.
Well, let's continue to turn back the clock then.
Sure.
What advice would you give to a younger you?
You know, I have this conversation. Especially when I was at Bethel, I was both the executive vice president and a full-time business professor. And younger people will on occasion observe that I've had a pretty good career and will ask me for my advice. I recently had one of your younger colleagues in my office for that reason. The advice that I would give myself, but that I give younger professional people as they begin their professional journey is over-deliver. So this is actually the example I use. If you get hired by some business owner to mow her grass at her business, and she's paying you $100, and it is approximately a 4-hour job, you can either half-ass it and take 4 hours to mow the yard and get paid your $100, or you can bust it, mow the grass in 2.5 hours, and then notice that there are weeds in the landscaping and that the exterior windows could be washed, and do those extra things that are beyond even what is required of you. And if that gal comes outside, you overhear her talking about the fact that she's waiting for one of their vendors to deliver and he's running late and she's got an evening appointment and she's got to pick her kids up from school or whatever, volunteer, say, ma'am, my evening is free and it sounds like you're busy and you're kind of in a predicament. I would be happy to stay here until your vendor delivers. And if you trust me with the keys, we'll get it all put in the warehouse and locked up. You can go on and take care of your other responsibilities.
Yeah.
And don't even expect her to pay you for that. Do it because it's the right thing to do. If you conduct yourself in that kind of way, you will realize every compensation goal you have. You will realize every promotion goal you have. Fix problems for people. Do your work to the best of your ability and beyond. Double check stuff. Be early to appointments. Deliver on deadlines. Be the person that people know they can trust at all times. And you will be given greater and greater and greater amounts of responsibility and authority.
That's sound advice. Where does that come from? Was that?
My dad was the oldest of 10 kids, and he went to work at age 12 to contribute to the family budget, not to buy a new bike, but because his parents needed extra income. And that work ethic was handed willingly or unwillingly to my brother and I when we were younger kids. And it's hard for me to believe because I've got 5 kids and I did not parent them this way. But, on a Saturday morning, my brother and I would get up and we would have an 8-hour list of chores that my dad had penciled out the evening before. And we were welcome to go to baseball practice or go and get together with our friends as soon as those chores were over. So if you wanted to go to baseball practice at 2:00 in the afternoon, you were up at 6 in the morning working on your chores, and you learned to work hard. It's probably a family dysfunction too, because when my dad gets together with his 9 siblings, one of the things that is a predictable part of the conversation is they all talk about how hard they're working. Oh man, I'm building a lake house and I'm pulling double duty at work and I've just got this promotion and, we lost 2 people and I've had to take up. It's unhealthy in some respects, but that's where I inherited it. It's a McCown family trait in many respects.
Well, if you could accomplish a goal over the next year or 3 years, a major goal, what would it be, whether it be personally or here within the foundation? The foundation is at this, there's no work-life balance. The foundation and I are kind of inextricably in a symbiotic relationship. So one of the things that we're focused on right now is we've launched an early childhood initiative in which we want to make sure every child in Elkhart County arrives at kindergarten ready to be successful. And we know about half of the children in Elkhart County that arrive in kindergarten don't have a core set of skills that we're evaluating. So we've hired a team of people. We're deploying tens of millions of dollars. We've partnered with Beacon Health System and Goshen Health System and CAPS and the health department and the Women's Care Center and Reason Enough to Act and Maple City Healthcare and the United Way and Heart City Healthcare, because all of those healthcare organizations are interacting with the expectant moms and then the infants of those moms and the developing children. So they're kind of our first point of contact. But we're also interacting with the faith community and the United Way around supporting preschools and family support systems and all the rest of it. So, if I have a goal, one of the things that would be a great sense of accomplishment to me is if we begin to see that 50% number become 60%, become 70%. The most alarming thing for me as we began exploring this issue was kindergarten readiness is the statistically best predictor of whether or not a child reads at grade level in 3rd grade.
And tragically, the federal government uses third grade reading score outcomes to project how many federal penitentiaries they will need to build in the next 20 years. So our theory here, I mean, we're going to continue to invest in youth serving organizations like Boys and Girls Club and Lifeline and others.
Right.
And we do grant to both private and public schools in Elkhart County for like summer programs. But once they get to kindergarten, there's lesser margin. I mean, at some level, those children are in the hands of the public schools and their parents. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit of after school, something, a little bit of summer, something. But our theory is that if we can make sure that they're ready, do the interventions possible to make sure that they're ready by the time they hit the doors of a formal school structure, that they will be ready to succeed. So that's one thing we're interested in and we're working on. We've got a bike trail initiative. I want to parent well and husband well, and I've got 5 young adult children that I still get to have, influence over. So, those would be my personal goals and aspirations. I'd love to see my handicap come down from a 6 to a scratch, but I don't know that I'm ever going to see that day again. So, we've got a variety of things that are priorities to us around here.
Yeah, maybe, with as you pared down the number of events that you've attended, maybe just put the golf, more golf out.
Oh yeah, I've had more of those opportunities. Unfortunately, I get to play a lot of work-related golf.
Well, do you have a risk that you've taken in the past that's propelled you forward, or a favorite failure that you can point back on and just seen exponential growth?
A risk would be, I thought my career path, I earned 2 master's degrees and a PhD thinking that I was preparing myself to be a college president. And I spent 20 years in faith-based private higher education. And I had the opportunity or the invitation to leave that career path and come to the foundation. And I did it out of an act of kind of curiosity and obedience. I got to tell you, the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, I love the work I did in higher education, but this work is actually far more rewarding. And I would say a disappointment or a failure that I had, I've been at the foundation 13 years. So maybe 17 or 18 years ago, I applied for a college presidency. And I was in my late 30s. I thought I was ready. The institution felt about right. What they were looking for seemed to align with what I had experience with. I knew the search firm that was doing the search, and they asked me to be a candidate. My wife and I got to a point where we were one of 2 candidates that they invited to campus for a 3-day interview and meet the faculty and meet the board. And I mean, we were so serious that my parents were looking at houses in this community because we had school-age children, and my parents were so enthusiastic about this whole idea that they were prepared to locate to Mobile, Alabama,
wow,
to be available grandparents and caregivers for me to take this position. The headhunter told me, we've got to bring 2 candidates, but in my mind, you are the right choice. The other candidate doesn't have some of the experiences. And then like a week after our visit, he called me to tell me that they had gone with the other candidate and that the other candidate had accepted the position. And Craig, I got to tell you, I was shocked and devastated. Like, I had already mentally become the president of Hunting Dunn University in Montgomery, Alabama, as opposed to Huntington here in Indiana. And I grieved for like 3 months. I got to tell you now, that country music song that goes something along, sometimes God's greatest gift is unanswered prayer. And when I look back at my career and where I've landed and how much I love this work, I am so thankful that they went the other direction. I still think I could have done a pretty good job there. But in my own journey, I'm thankful that something I thought I wanted didn't happen.
I've got two final questions for you. If you had a billboard in town and you could deliver a message to the community, what would it say?
Love God, love others.
All right. Why is that?
Well, as I described earlier, my own Christian faith informs the way I conduct myself and see the world. And that is Jesus' greatest commandment.
And my last question, I love this one. What's one of the kindest things somebody's done for you or your family?
That one's easy too. So, it comes in two parts. So 33 years ago, I proposed marriage to a wonderful woman who said yes. And then she became the mother of my children, and she parented them well, and she supported my career path and our family, which is what has allowed me to have the professional experiences that I've had. So Wendy is the greatest gift.
Well, Pete, I'll give you the opportunity here to just close with anything that you want to communicate, whether it be leadership related, or even just about the foundation here that you'd want to communicate to people and members of the community.
I think we've talked about the foundation. We are one instrument. We are one means for people to be generous. For many people, that makes sense. But I'm just as delighted to see people give to the United Way. I'm just as delighted to see them give directly to other organizations. Our philosophy around here is just to help people be generous. And if we do enough of that well, kind of good things happen to the organization too. You asked me about leadership and book, kind of in your pre-narrative. So there is a book that I'm going to give you a copy of, and I would encourage anybody else that hears this podcast, all three of you.
There might be four. I checked the statistics yesterday.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So I just recently gave this book to our board members. All of our staff have received a copy of this book. In my cabinets, I've got 20 copies at any moment in time, but 15 or 20 years ago. So I'd been in leadership in various forms for maybe 15 years as an adult. And this book was published. It's entitled The 7 Pillars of Servant Leadership. Somewhere along the line, I received a copy of it. And when I read this book, it validated my own philosophy of leadership. And it has these 7 pillars, hence the title, that center on the issues of humility and integrity and concern for others, but also communication and vision and some of that. There's really 2 manifestos that guide my life. One is the Bible, and the other is this book, 7 Pillars of Servant Leadership. And so anybody that's willing to accept a copy from me, I generously give them a copy, and I would encourage people to find themselves a copy and give it a read. It's only a 3 or 4 hour read.
Well, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
It's clear why years ago I reached out to people and said, who would I need to connect with? Your name came up. So thank you for sharing just information on the foundation, but then also your leadership journey.
You're welcome.
All right.
Pleasure.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Path Less Travel podcast. Have a great day.